It's 1997 in the city. There's a raging heat wave, an incredible drug war in the streets between the Colombians and the Jamaicans and the police trying to intervene. And the predators have always chosen heat and conflict, where the action is, where the danger is. What would it be like to have an extraterrestrial dilettante hunter hunt us the same way that we go to Africa and hunt big game? That was the very first concept. The first one was set in Central America, where a lot of military action was taking place. Had it been 20 years before that, it probably would have been someplace like Vietnam or Cambodia.
You feel like you're watching one of Arnold's, action flicks, and then all of a sudden, out of left field comes this alien.
When we were in the jungle, we always talked about what possible sequels there might be, and one of the fantasies we had is what would this camouflage effect look like? What would the predator look like in an urban environment? What would he look like against concrete and steel in the cities? So that was one of the things that we always toyed around with.
The writers had done the first one, and so they knew the story really clearly, and so that was really helpful. And I don't think they'd quite finished the script when I first came on. They really talked me through it, and then they showed me where they were. And because it happened so quickly, then I worked with them, and I'd be storyboarding sequences to see how these sequences could work. They knew what the sequences wanted to be, they just hadn't completely described them all.
It's always a question with sequels. So many times they have a tendency to, to beat the same idea to death again.
It's not just an alien movie, it's not just a horror movie, it's a detective story, it's a mystery, it's a science fiction story, it's an action movie, and it crosses over into a lot of different genres.
This is quite cerebral, and you get a sense of who this otherworldly being is, and I don't use the word monster, otherworldly being is, and his train of thought.
I think the first Predator was a terrific experience for all the moviegoers because it was a terrific creature, but it went to the jungle, and the jungle is something we may see on the news, but it's not really part of our daily lives because we all live in the cities and suburbs. And I think this movie really hits home because it shows the dangers of the city. It shows where we may be headed if we're not careful with our air and our crime and our violence in the streets. Basically what happens is, this creature realizes that this is a place to party. This is hot stuff in the city.
Like a redneck on a weekend and goes hunting for trophies and fun. And hopes to leave with enough stuff to impress his friends.
The Predator is now in an urban environment rather than in the jungle. And actually it's left it much more wide open for planning of stunts because we have motor vehicles and buildings and large expanses between buildings that he can leap and jump down from tall buildings to lower buildings and stuff, where in the jungle we were somewhat limited to just the trees and the bushes and things.
He's off on a wild trip. This one is not doing what normal predators do, which is hunt and go by the rules. He's definitely breaking all the rules. So he's a wild boy.
All of a sudden it gets turned around, right. Yeah, there's a reversal in this movie. The humans are being hunted. It's about time. That's kind of a universal statement here.
Up until the 20s or 30s or 40s in this planet, hunting was very much a manly and a heroic thing to do and never thought of as detrimental to the environment or sadistic in any way. And like you say, it's a reversal in that way. I don't think this creature sees it as a wrong thing to do. He sees it as an honorable opportunity.
In terms of the environment, I mean, what if it's 110 degrees all over the world in 1997? We could be headed that way. Who knows? But anyway, these outer world life forces that come in have these self-defense mechanisms that they can exist anywhere, anytime, any place. And if they get cornered or confused, they will terminate themselves rather than being captured. And this is what my character knows. And it's a delicate job, trailing him. And we have all kinds of sensor computers to test his heat and to see where he is, to find out where his spacecraft is, to find out where he eats, what he eats, where he's going to hit next, what his patterns of decomposing the enemy is, and who he's after. And I want to get in here, and I set up the last mission, which was the CIA commission in the jungles. And that's how we lost the character that Arnold played. We lost him 9 weeks after the movie was over. That's why he's not here.
So Arnold went off to do Terminator 2, which is a much bigger project with one of the great directors in the world. And I think in a way it was interesting not to have Arnold in it, you know, because it just made it a really different piece.
This is what I call a speech, kid. It's the only one I got. I only give it once, so pay attention. Till now, it's all been fun and games, cops and robbers, Dunkin' Donuts. But you're in the shit now.
I think Harrigan rhymes with arrogant in some sort of way, and I think this cop is somewhat that. He's full of his own, you know. He says he lives in a rough time, a rough period, and he says these are my streets, and I want to know what's going on.
Danny's got a big heart. He's a wonderful giving actor. We did Lethal Weapon 1 together, then we traveled to Japan and China and Australia together, promoting it.
Working with Danny, I have to tell you, he's been such a hero of mine. It was the same way with, you know, working with Arnold on the first pictures. You see these people, and all of a sudden you're opposite them. Danny has got such good energy, and he's always so committed. You know, when he's chasing me, you know, he's really after me. When I'm after him, he's really running. It's been really fun. It's been fun.
Well, I really wanted to work with Danny. I kind of felt like if we had an actor who you weren't used to being in these sort of roles, but who had this kind of strong physicality, that he might bring something to a character that really didn't have much chance to really, you know, you didn't have much chance to find out about him.
I found it kind of interesting to be playing opposite him because it's almost like I felt like I was watching him on TV or something. It's like, oh wait, it's my line now? But no, he's very centered, he's very methodical, and he's almost like hypnotic in his acting. Brings you in so much that you really can't help but listen to him if he's talking to you in a scene, which is the best thing that you can possibly be doing, is actually really listening.
Now, don't get me wrong. We need good cops down here, and they say you're good at what you do. But the team comes first. That's it.
It's like making a cake, and he's got a good content of batter and the variation of spices that go into making a performance. Danny's got the energy to put forth life on the celluloid.
You don't know what you're dealing with, and I'm warning you. Stay the fuck out my way.
It's wonderful to be to work with Gary again. It's like family again, you know. It's always nice about this business. Sometimes you get a chance, but often you don't. But sometimes you get a chance to work with people who you admire and people that you've worked with before.
I guess you're wondering what we're doing here in these barbecue outfits. Well, it's easy. We're going in after another world life force from another galaxy that has a self-defense mechanism that we don't understand. It's intangible to this time and space. It's actually from the theory of relativity and from the theory of quantum mechanics. Take those properties and equalize them, and you have the quantum theory of gravity, which is a discussion of how this universe started and how it will end. The Predator knows that information already. It is our job and our objective to go capture the Predator, sit him down, have a talk with him, find out why he does what he does, how he does what he does, and where he gets the weaponry and the defense mechanisms he uses in order to obtain his goal. And that is our goal. If we don't achieve that goal, we will be turned into vapor clouds made of small pink particles known on Earth as blood.
Gary Busey had worked on Lethal Weapon with Joel, so he really wanted, you know, him to be in the film, and, you know, which I was completely happy about because he's quite a character.
No, I think it was good for the team. I just need my glasses! Need the glasses. You see what happens? You get in the movies and what happens? You get some sunglasses that cost $5,000. You lose them in the chopper, they take them away, you never see them again. They say it's an e-ticket ride, but it's not. It's a Fox ticket ride, and I'm having a ball.
But Gary hadn't done a film for a couple of years because he had a terrible motorcycle accident, which he was very lucky to survive, and in fact died for a while, and regaled us with all these stories about what it felt like, the afterlife.
December 4th, 1988, at 1:15 in the afternoon, I hit the concrete going 45 knots. And I had some out-of-body experiences, and I went to the other side. So there's a real curious element in what is out of this world, and we're just merely a speck in the whole thing.
He's just such a huge character. It was great to have him playing a role that otherwise would have been played by some nerdy scientific, you know, kind of feeling person.
Lions, the tigers, the bears. Oh, my.
Trophies. That's the game, isn't it, Keys?
You're the lion. This is his jungle.
Hold 1 second. I can't remember the name of my of my partner. What's Bill Paxton. Okay. So the team is Danny Glover and Rubén Blades and Billy Paxton and myself. And we are the 4 detectives that are fighting this mafioso stuff.
She kind of reminded me mostly of more of this policewoman that I knew who we were using as a consultant.
Maria was kind of like, she said, well, I can't get to know you too well. You know, we're not supposed to like each other in the movie. I'm her new partner, and I've got this reputation for being a real loner. Yeah, and the idea that I got a partner hurt or killed before I came to this division, and she's worried about that.
You try that cowboy shit with me, fucking, you can kiss this. Goodbye. Got it?
Yeah, I got it.
I love it when she puts on her tough thing with me, because underneath I know she's just a really genuinely sweet, warm, affectionate person.
Maria Conchita Alonso is a Venezuelan actress who is also an accomplished musician. I met her in Venezuela many years ago as a musician. At the time, she was also working in television. She was doing soap operas.
Maria and I have the same birthday, and she loves onions and garlic. She's a lovely singer.
Gary Busey is also here, but the predator is not after him. Oh! He's after me, but so there he is.
That's really an onion. It looks like an Oreo, but it's an onion. This girl loves onion and garlic because that's the only thing the predator will go for. So she eats onions and garlic. They look like Oreos, and I'm not kidding you. If I was kidding you, I wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere else in a different suit of clothes, working in a regular job.
Gary,
thank you very much.
Here, have your cookie.
Thanks. I'll see you
You're
later.
welcome. Bye.
Nobody says shit like Maria.
No, I've been feeling like shit the whole week.
You like shit. No, but Rubén is my second time around with Rubén. And it was a joy the first time, and Rubén's my brother in a way, and it's equally a joy this time.
And I'm playing Danny Archuleta. He's a detective here in Los Angeles. I'm a partner with Danny Glover.
I knew of Rubén Blades, who's this great rock singer and this up-and-coming politician in Panama at the time. And he is just so natural. I kind of felt it was great to have someone like himself, someone you didn't expect in that role. And so not everyone was like these huge, you know, hunky, enormous, you know, bodybuilders.
He's got the essence of purity in terms of performing what the content of his character is and where he is going in his mind and heart as his character.
Chiefs La Victoria, Chiefs to die for.
One night was going on with this guy, we're waiting for inside, we're ready, and you know, this guy's being interviewed, and now give me an answer. So I rushed across, and I just grabbed him and said, Rubén, we've got to go. And he kind of ignored me, and everyone ignored me, so I didn't know what was going on. I said, guys, we have to shoot. And I kind of grabbed the earpiece and helped him out of the chair. So and I started talking, you know, what about the scene was about, and walking away with him. And it was, you know, dawn, last shot. I go home, I wake up that night to do the next night shooting with like 100,000 messages in the answering machine, because I didn't realize I'd taken him off live. He was being interviewed by Joe in London from New York live on Good Morning America. And so I was in deadly trouble because I'd, you know, cursed on screen in front of many millions of people. And it looked like I treated Rubén badly, who was a sort of a Latino icon. And you know, I got death threats on the phone and all sorts of terrible things. And of course, I didn't mean to do any of that. So we shot the next night. And then after shooting the next night, Rubén and I went to a studio in downtown LA, and we were going to do something mischievous, like have a fight, but we didn't, and then I had to talk to a camera, and we got interviewed by Joe in London from New York, and actually since then they've never done a live interview. That was the last one they've ever done, but I was very famous for about 10 minutes. So.
Yeah, let's get the rest of them. We can. We just got orders from Chief Heinemann. He says secure perimeter, surround building, and wait. Wait? For what? I don't know. Some bullshit special unit, the feds, the DEA.
I play a character, his name is Detective Jerry Lambert. he's the new kid on the block.
And Bill Paxton had been in a couple of Jim Cameron films, and a few things I'd seen. He was just so funny and so outrageous and just so didn't care about, you know, putting out this huge performance. So it was fun.
So I went in to meet him, and I put on this suit that I thought maybe the character would wear. Sometimes I'll go in with an element of costume. I don't want these directors to have to stretch their imagination too much, you know. So I went in, we had a great meeting. It's really just a good rapport, it was just a good vibe, and I felt like it went really well. And I expected to be called back to read for the part. 2 days later, I found out I had an offer, which really thrilled me. That meant a lot to me. That meant that the director had met me, he knew my previous work, and I mean, he'd seen Near Dark and Alien stuff, and he just said, yeah, I want Bill Paxton. And that's the greatest thing an actor can have going into a movie.
Bill Paxton, he's got the energy of a government mule.
I'll handle it. PR's my specialty.
Feds just sent word they want your ass off the job.
Tony, my man!
Who the hell are you?
Your biggest fan!
How you doing, everybody? I'm Morton Downey Jr. In Predator 2, I play a guerrilla-like street reporter by the name of Anthony Pope.
Well, Morton was sort of quite the celebrity pre-Jerry Springer character at the time, and he had he had an outrageous TV show. He would bring people on who were deliberately abrasive and political and loud, and then he would attack them on camera and scream at them. It was all play acting, it was all made up. He makes quite a splash in the film, and he's definitely the guy you want to, you know, punch out.
Hey, Harrigan! More victims, more mutilation! Fuck you!
Kevin was the guy in Hollywood who did all the big stuff. He did Predator. He did what's the movie with the giant?
I played Harry in Harry and the Hendersons.
Harry and the Hendersons he'd done, and he spent really a lot of his time, you know, manipulating these suits, and there was no one really like him.
I did a movie called Without Warning, which was about an alien that comes to Earth to hunt man. So I guess I've done Predator 3 or 4 times.
He was very tall, and he was super smart, and he was a great, he had a great mime physicality.
Most of my film career has been creature career, whereas most of my television, I've never played a monster on television, except for the Gong Show when I played Frankenstein.
He understood the shape and mime very well. We'd try the people in the suit, and it just wouldn't be the same. He understood so clearly what it was, and he was always in charge of that side of it. And so it was great for me great for me to walk into a film where he had such a command of that.
Save the rig, that's lunch, 1/2.
Bring all 4, boys.
No, 1 is not a print. 1 is not a print.
We love you, Kevin. You're letting me be on film.
That's why they're not in the movie.
I'm Stan Winston. This is John Rosengrant. This is Shane Mahan.
They made me what I am today.
I want you to know that this man was 4'11" before we met him.
That's right. This is these are the guys that make me the monster.
Is that a camera?
that's a camera.
Oh, gosh.
I've worked for the Stan Winston studio for over 20 years, and I was part of the team that actually created the first Predator, which led to our involvement in Predator 2.
Probably the most important aspect of all the work I do in creating these creatures is the fact that I don't do any of it, and that these are the people that actually do it and have been making me look good for a lot of years. Shane Mahan and John Rosengrant, who are the head of my art department, have been with me for too many years. And the life of it is from Richard Landon in the back there, who's the head of the mechanical department. So we have the aspect of the art that it takes to make the creature and the art that it takes to make the creature live. These are the most important aspects of all of the creatures we do. Broad concept the same. The difference is that this is a different individual. a different individual of the same species. As is a snake is a snake is a snake, but different snakes are different. Their colorings are different. Different parts of their characteristics, their facial structures, subtle differences. Now, to the average public, this predator will look like the same predator as Predator 1 because to the average public, they all look alike.
Our involvement in Predator 2 was exciting because we got to further our characters and kind of flesh them out and figure out more of the Predator's culture because there was going to be multiples in this movie.
Bring back the Predator, but bring back a new Predator. Make him be a little bit more dynamic than the first. Give back the audience what they saw originally, but give them a little bit more. Since he'll be in the movie more, he needs to have more character. He needs to have more life in his face. We had the fortunate first film to learn what we would like to do better. And now, fortunately, we have the second film, and we can do those things that we weren't able to do in the first film.
They knew the film was going to be made, so he'd been working on it.
I want to say, I think it was 3 months, somewhere around that, on Predator 2. So you're building and creating all that. Then when you go to the set, your duties become making sure that the suit is maintained, looks artistically correct, that at the time it was Kevin Peter Hall inside the suit, that he's comfortable. And then you're there puppeteering his face when his mask is off because you're articulating his brows and the exterior mandibles. It was Kevin's eyes with contact lenses inside. It was a very tight-fitting mask that would cinch down around his eyes.
They knew we were going to see a lot more of the Predator in the second one. And be it whether it's in dark situations or not, it still had to be very carefully regulated. The last thing you want to do is see a really huge guy clambering around in a giant suit.
In creating the suits, we had to do it slightly differently this time than we did the first time around. First time around, a lot of the armor that was on the Predator was part of his suit. So he put the whole thing on, and most of it was intact. Because we were going to create many Predators that had to look different, we ended up having only basic pieces of armor on him, the whole chest and the whole harness that holds the gun pack. All that became separate. And I think it created a more realistic look because I think in Predator 2 we're going to spend more time looking at these characters than in the first movie, so it's better to have all those separate and kind of moving and functioning and would actually clip on. And then by having the Predator bodies without the armor on them, the naked chests, it allowed us for the background ones or the ones that would be seen later, you could augment them by putting different armor on in a mix and match fashion. On Predator 2, I just remember us going through cases and cases of Predator blood. It was an interesting mix of the Siloam sticks, glow sticks, that when you break them and all the ingredients would then go into a cup with KY jelly. And that would give us the pasty, glowing blood. So he gets wounded many times in this, so there was just times on set where we were just mixing up gobs of this stuff, putting it all over him. Then you'd have to, in between takes, you'd have to mix up another set of it because it would only last for a finite amount of time. That's how the blood was done in the first one as well.
Stuff that they used to break off and go to raves with, or whatever they would do, was the Predator's blood.
We are now shooting Predator 2 in Los Angeles rather than the jungles of Palenque, Mexico. Makes our job much easier. We're home. And unfortunately, the Predator's here with us.
Well, shooting downtown at nighttime still has a lot of the same problems as it did then, because I've now shot down this since then for Judgment Night, for 24, for all sorts of movies. And, you know, you book places down there and you tell residents, but in the end, no one really wants you there all night making a noise all the time. So since then and during then, you know, when you go downtown, you run a gauntlet. You get things thrown at you, bottles of piss or bags full of human shit, and which is a pretty good trick if you think about it. That's pretty good at putting you off. You know, we were cleaning out alleyways down there to shoot in, and you know, we'd find dead bodies under the garbage, and there were giant rats down there, which the grips would delight in putting on leashes because they were like small dogs, and walk them around. And nowadays, I don't think we'd be able to do a lot of things we did then, which we'd be shooting in the streets with explosions. We'd have, you know, helicopters landing in the street, you know, which is absolutely unheard of now. I'm not sure if you could get away with doing half the stuff on rooftops and nighttime and shooting, and you know, there were shots would ring out around you. In those days, it was a lot more dangerous to shoot down there than it is now too.
One of the stunts we have in our film that we considered a high-risk situation was when the predator's hanging on the side of a building 150 feet high, and he's fighting with Danny Glover, and Danny severs his arm. That's the only thing holding the predator onto the building, so the predator falls. We used a device called the descender. It's a wire that we put him on and actually drop him at speed and then break him real quick before he gets to the ground. And the gentleman we used, Dave Smith, is a one-armed stuntman who lives in San Diego, who came up to play the predator for that day. And he had never even seen a descender work before. So on top of preparing everything, I had to also make sure that he was real comfortable with it too.
He had to be really brave for that because we were actually up on a 13-story building, and he's on like a descender rig where he comes flying down that building after that arm gets cut off. So we were all up 13 stories working on that scene where Danny Glover is there and Kevin is there, and we were all kind of working on the edge of that building, you know, to get that real effect. Not sure they do it exactly like that nowadays. Everything was safe. We were all lashed, had like cables on us and whatever, so we couldn't fall off, but you still sometimes get that weird vertigo feeling looking down 13 stories. But Dave had to take that fall coming down, which was pretty wild.
I'm real excited today. It's a great day to talk because it's the climax scene. It's the last scene in the movie, and it's the final confrontation between the Predator and Danny, and you get to see the spacecraft, which is so fabulous, you know. So we're all really jazzed. I mean, it's really buzzing here today.
What you come to realize is there is underground in Los Angeles a spaceship, and it's a spaceship housing our Predator.
The spaceship, you know, took a long time to design, and once again, it wasn't the biggest budget in the world. It wasn't like a Terminator film or something. So Larry kind of came up with this idea of like these backlit polystyrene things, and we were all interested because of the history of the Predator, of Mayan architecture and all the Mayan graphics and all the temples and stuff in Mexico and South America, where you see a lot of their representations of their gods look like spacemen in space capsules, you know. Chariot of the gods kind of stuff.
So it's something that I don't think you've seen in quite a long time. A very functional, smart, strong, utilitarian, you know, alien craft, very much like the Predator itself, you know, mimicking its, you know, movements and camouflage, and being a real great combination of organic and primitive, reptilian, little touches of Aztec and Mayan, and it's almost like it's a weapon itself.
You know, you put dry ice in just to make it feel like a hot sort of environment that they came from, sort of steamy and stuff.
I had a steam room put in my house, and you know, it's recent, you know, it's new. I got to get some of the kinks out of it, but it gets all the impurities out of the body, you know. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, you should see some of the things I've been able to do, some of the things I've been able to do and collect with my steam room. Over here, for example, we're all going to look like this one day, you know. So don't be frightened. I mean, don't be perturbed because I showcase this, but it gives me a sense of a completeness and everything back to nature, you know? And these are some artifacts that I've collected, and makes a nice little accommodation to this wonderful steam room. You know, you're invited over if you get a chance. I mean, you're gonna have a ball.
I think the idea of putting the alien head in the film was Stan's originally. It was a great idea, and there's a sequence in the middle of the film where he cuts off the head of the Jamaican gang leader guy. and you see him cleaning the head and preparing it for its trophy.
We just kind of went wild and fabricated up a bunch of different alien skeletons and whatever to go in that case, and kind of a nod to that comic that was going on at the time. We did an alien skull and put it in there, just kind of an inside fun thing.
And originally you saw the alien head there, and then you see it again at the end, but then when we cut it together, we thought, if you put the alien head there, we wondered if that was gonna, you think that that's gonna start off a different storyline, so we cut it out of the first bit, but at the end you see it pretty clearly, but we kind of throw it away a bit. We don't concentrate too much on it, we just leave it as a part. There's other great skulls up there too, of these gigantic monsters, you know, so beautifully made. Winston really did an incredible job on this film. They did so much stuff that unless you really study the film, like all the details and the costumes of trinkets and artifacts and jewelry that they've taken from people that they've killed, you know, and it really builds up on the costumes, and if you look closely, it feels like they've had a history, you know, and that's very important that you stop people looking at the rubber. The shot at the end with all the Predators appearing was an incredibly expensive outing. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars at the time, because we had to have all the different Predators, and once in suits, so we had to have suits for everyone, which is really expensive. And then we had to shoot them all against blue screen and green screen separately over and over again for different reasons, and they were standing in dryouts, which was a pain in the arse. And Danny was a huge Lakers fan, and because it's so long ago now, I can't remember exactly who we got for the costumes, but I know Danny asked the Lakers, I think we got a couple of the Lakers at the time, to come and be in the costumes, because we needed these really tall guys who are athletic and who could support a huge amount of weight. There's an older one who's the main guy, and then there's sort of younger, groovier ones and slimmer ones and different colored ones.
Each artist that was working here kind of had one that I said, you know, you come up with, you know, here's some general paint schemes, ideas, and you know, you add your touches to this one, and you decorate them with your own jewelry or whatever you want to do to it. And so, you know, each one became a fun project for all the artists working on it. The elder Predator, we call them the grayback, you know, kind of like a silverback kind of idea. That was generated out of the old Predator mold, and we made some different appliances to go on his face with some extra ridges and to just change him. But if the fans out there look carefully at his suit and everything, even though he's got a different paint scheme and we kind of dressed him slightly different, that's the original Predator that's been kind of doctored up. So his head shape is a little different. It's more like the original one.
The film was never finished till the last second. There were no audience previews. You know, we just about made our 70mm print for the premiere. I mean, it was still wet when we were showing it. It was such a long, complicated post because of all the effects. And that you know, I look at it now and I change things, you know. I want to change loads of stuff I see now. And I mean, my filmmaking style is completely different, but at the time it was just a riot. I just had the best time.
I said put it down, asshole!
This shot will be accomplished with a motion control camera that was programmed to tilt up and shot a number of plates. One was the first plate of the background itself, with the antenna, with nobody there, and then shot the same thing again with a wider lens, which would help us in the camouflage effect. And then we shot it again with the red guy there, with the red-suited Predator monster. I was on set while this was happening on a rooftop in Los Angeles. It was a hot summer day, as I recall. And the guy in the red suit, he had a rough time. Sometimes they were piping cool air into him because it got a little hot in that suit. Today, I think we would probably do the same thing. Aside from actually trying to computer generate the character, the body movement for this effect, it would be much more efficient, I think, actually to still use a human being in a red suit and do the original photography the same way. The close-ups were, of course, much easier to accomplish with a locked-off camera. The main reason that we did not use the dreadlocks when the Predator was in the red suit was because that was a matting nightmare. So we just kept it simple, kept the Predator's shape without dreadlocks to make it easier to understand and not create any noisy images. And the red suit was really sort of because that's the way we'd done it in the first one when we were shooting the Predator against green jungle We went with a red suit and just sort of stuck with that for Predator 2. But the reason it's a red suit is like blue screen or green screen, it's a color that you can control optically.
I said put it down, asshole!
This is one of my favorite shots. Underneath the water was a dolly track that was driven by a motion control camera, or motion control computer. The camera itself sitting on the dolly with the camera body about an inch above the water. The pneumatics under the water were programmed from the same motion control computer, or the same computer that's making the camera move down the alley on a dolly that you can't see, that's just under the water. The pneumatics were the things that caused the water to blow up. They were copper tubing with about 20 little holes in them, and they were driven by compressed air. A solenoid was used to turn the air on and off, and that was also driven by the motion control computer to go off in roughly the pace of walking, but really set to go off at a good distance away from the camera for maximum dramatic effect. What we're seeing here is a combination of the alley shoot with the pneumatics under the water, shot by our underwater motion control camera, and a stage shoot, a black stage shoot, where we had set up marks for the Predator to hit as he walked in front of the camera. We had a audio click track, just sounds, little beeps, that were timed to the pace of his walking. If the clicks were going off, that was the point at which he should put his foot down. It took a few attempts, of course, to get this right. And as you can see, he's not doing the best job of that at this point. But after several tries, we finally nailed it and got his feet to hit the right spot relative to the camera at the right time. There's still, the human factor here. It was not totally computer controlled, and so we just had to get the human in sync with our motion control camera.
On the Predator, his gauntlet knives, because that's where it came out of. We had that again in Predator 2, and I think that was always a really unique, fun weapon. We spent a lot of time, though, working on the gauntlets that he wore, that knife would come out of. The first Predator, we had even less time to create everything that we did. In the second Predator, at least we knew going in, we learned from what the first one was, and the gauntlets were separate in that. And so they were either hard or rubber pieces that we put in a lot of effort. I think visually they looked great in the first movie, but functionally they were a little tough to deal with because they were foam rubber onto the suit. So this time they were separate. And that also helped when the knives would come in and out of there because the mechanisms would be built in more of a hard piece. In the first movie, he's got his little self-destruct mechanism or his communicator. It's all in one. Souped up Dick Tracy watch there. In both movies, Predator 1 and 2 were very detailed with, especially at the time, it was coming up with LEDs and LCD stuff and pretty intricate little wiring pattern that would make these Predator symbols and cool stuff. We redesigned the look of that laser cannon just to give this guy a different personality. I had helped do some of the original sketches on that, and I had different samurai armor in front of me that I was looking at. So the breech cloud area and the look of it was a little samurai influence. That was all radio controlled, so that thing could track and could follow and hit marks. Hopefully it always hit its marks on camera, you know, where it needed to go. We actually had lasers inside of his helmet. There's like 3 lasers that were in there that in the right set environment, the spooky, smoky, kind of foggy looking thing. Those lasers are actually real in some of those shots. In Predator 2, they came up with this idea for the net gun, which he had stored down here. We pull it up and it would shoot it out. And that was a tricky effect to pull off. And that was a bit of a cheat, because there was really no way to get that net to accurately fire. So we did it in a few different cuts where we could get the net flying through the air and then pull down onto that actor that gets trapped by it in a separate cut. That was a tricky effect in that we had a dummy that we recreated of the one actor that could pull that net down into his skin, and you'd start to see the blood coming up.
Then they hired me on the film. They told me there wasn't no mosquitoes around, man. I told you I cannot stand mosquitoes.
Okay, this is the Predator's smart weapon, as it's called, which is basically like a double-edged axe blade / frisbee. And the way it activates is Kevin Peter Hall, who's a Predator, holds it like this. And then my hand's not big enough to actually engage it, but we can just cheat it. And it snaps open, and he flings it like a discus. And it tracks and actually follows Danny Glover.
This section will come out and turn into the frisbee.
It's like heat-seeking in a way, because it, you know, it would always get to its target. We built working ones that would light up and you know, would take good close-ups, because they had nice sharp edges on them, and it was fun.
There's razor blades on the end.
Surgical blades. These are surgical scalpel blades. Much sharper than X-Acto.
Richard's very crazy.
Keep it in your hand. That's the safest place. Don't let go of it or try to get rid of it.
Again, no one should be over here, Gary, right? Because he lets go of it. Yeah. Pretty tight on here, but then just pulls it pretty even tighter, you know, just like. Got it. And just give that last little head bang at top of brains. And he's really tight, and he's looking down. Look down, like then the camera will kind of come down to your hand here.
Okay,
and
so
then
Richard, you know. Okay.
Cut yourself out. As you cut yourself out, like fall forward.
Okay. I did exactly what you told me not to do.
This is a Predator's telescoping spear, and it starts out this size here, and then both ends expand out until it gets to be this large here, so that he can basically store it on his belt and then pull it out, and it'll expand, and then it's ready for action. We had to use cuts to go from about 3 foot, and it had to grow to close to 7 feet, or darn near that. So we had a couple of different ones that could grow to a certain level, and then you'd cut to the next one that could take it even further.
This is Tony Pope live with Hardcore, on the scene and in your face with another exclusive report. It's like Danny's hell down here. I mean, smoke, fire, the agonizing scream of men dying on the streets, a heat that's oppressive. The war goes on as the drug lords continue to terrorize Los Angeles. We've got... Wait a second now. What in the hell is going on? Who's in charge here? Not the cops. They're incompetent, outmanned, outgunned. Mr. Mayor, get your butt down here from your vacation home in Tahoe. Declare martial law and the slaughter.
Get the hell out of here! Get out of here!
No! In his face with it!
I told you to get back! Get the hell out of here! Get out of here! No! Get out of here!
Charge down here. The cops, they're outmanned, outgunned, and incompetent. Mr. Mayor, where are you? Tony Pope with a special edition of Hardcore. What kind of day is today, Ben? A day like any day when civilization unravels. Unravels because Colombians have taken over the city. Because police are no longer able to control and protect the citizens of the city. Unraveled because one of our bravest detectives is down and dead. And who's in control? The mayor? He's not even in this town anymore. Who is in control? What will be the final result of the actions that we have seen today? It's not over yet, my friends, and there's a long time to go. Watch some of the action taking place behind me now as we continue our report. We also found out that the feds have been called in on this thing. They're claiming that the police are incompetent.
Tony, my man!
Who the hell are you?
Oh, your biggest fan, Tony. I can't just stop you. Don't
Oh!
blow me, huh?
Man, what the...
Tony, my man!
Hey, who the hell are you? reporting live with hardcore. A disquieting lull sweeps this city, momentarily halting the raging drug wars. Behind it, the twisted wrath of the psycho-vigilante. Now a cop killer. Who's next? The man on the street? You? Your fam? Did Archuleta know too much, sir? You have information that he know what the motherfucker... Hey, wait a second, I'm trying to get a story here. Wait a second. I'm out of here. Trying to get a story here. Minor Capitan, let me remind you about your compatriot, Mr. Harrigan. He's up on official misconduct charges, isn't he?
It landed in the world's most forbidding jungle. The ultimate hunter in search of his favorite prey. Now, he's coming to a different kind of jungle.
Drought-ridden Los Angeles.
Oh, is he here? This is the first time I heard about it.
The Predator is in L.A.
Well, that should be interesting with people that we have around here.
The Predators have always chosen heat and conflict, where the action is, where the danger is.
It's a downtown Los Angeles of the future. It's a tough city where gangs are fighting in the streets, where drugs have become the bartering money.
You know, this creature realizes that this is a place to party. This is hot stuff in the city.
Mike! You okay?
Hey, let's get the rest of them. We can't. Just got orders from Chief Heinemann. He says secure perimeter, surround building, and wait. Wait for what?
Right now, we're trying to kill all the Colombians to get into their headquarters and see what's going on. Once we arrive there, we see all these like really icky, disgusting, like people dead with, you know, everything like the worst. But we don't know it's the Predator who did it.
You don't know what you're dealing with.
He is not going around Los Angeles mindlessly killing people.
He's a sportsman. He's a hunter. He comes from a race of hunters.
And he's found the greatest hunter of man there is on the planet. And that's in the form of the policeman that Danny Glover plays. And he goes to hunt him.
Certainly what attracted me to the role was the idea of fighting this mythical, otherworldly being.
He got tired of the rumble that he had in the jungle. And so I guess in L.A. he did stumble.
I think he'd come here for the girls.
Erica was out with him just the other day in L.A.
Visually, the movie is one of these films that's going to really pull the audience in and make them feel like they're just behind us.
It's not a comic book world, it's a very real world.
It's a mystery, it's a science fiction story, it's an action movie, and I think everyone will be surprised.
Predator 2. Hunting season opens again this Christmas.
Los Angeles, 1997. Record heat, choking pollution, rampant crime. An elite team of inner-city cops battle gangs for control of the streets.
It has not been a nice day.
As bad as things are, they're about to get worse. Much worse. In the 20th Century Fox production, Predator 2.
I think Harrigan, he lives in a rough time, a rough period, and he says, these are my streets, and I want to know what's going on.
We got a survivor. If the Colombians did all this, then why'd they leave their boss, Ramon, over there hanging 10 and his girlfriend naked on the floor?
Wasn't the Colombians.
Our friend from the armory.
Right. We got a new player in town.
The predator is attracted to this kind of atmosphere of violence and heat. He's a hunter. He comes from a race of hunters. The Harrigan's first assumption is that this is something that got him loose from the military.
This is what took him up into the rafters.
There's almost no weight.
But it cuts like steel.
The character's a bit more dangerous than anything I've done. It gave me a chance to be a little bit more athletic and nice stuff.
My character, Peter Keyes, has been on the Predator's trail for 15 years.
I got something you might find interesting.
What is this?
How many times do I have to tell you? You don't know what you're dealing with. There's your killer. Wonderful, isn't it? Pheromone signature left by his body. These are scent molecules.
We're going in after an otherworld life force from another galaxy that has a self-defense mechanism that we don't understand. His mentality is that there is a target that he's locked into, and he's gonna go get it.
3, 2, 1, action!
Maria Conchita Alonso plays Officer Leona Cantrell.
Right now, we're trying to kill all the Colombians to get into their headquarters and see what's going on. Once we arrive there, we see all these like really icky, disgusting, like people dead, but we don't know it's the Predator who did it. Mike, this is a dead end. We're way out of our league. My character, I'm this tough cookie, like a tomboy. Drop it and sit down. So the Predator is after the strong people.
I'm Rubén Blades, and I'm playing Danny Archuleta.
I want a name on this joker.
You got it. The Predator is also observing the action. He's just watching people committing acts of violence. And I think then that he will determine whose life it's gonna take, just at random.
Whoever did this took out 4 men armed with machine guns by hand.
The Predator kills out of a sporting desire.
I play Detective Jerry Lambert. I'm kind of referred to in the story as the Billy the Kid of the Rampart Division.
Metro Command is a war zone.
Lieutenant, I paid my dues.
There's no room for showboats to anyone looking to prove himself.
He really doesn't know what he's up against.
Luck is my specialty.
He thinks it's some psycho with this secret weaponry.
Stephen Hopkins, director of Nightmare on Elm Street 5, brings a unique visual style to Predator 2.
Do you have all of a sudden he goes, huh! He kind of sees it coming, you know?
It's a different story, a different type of movie. It's not just a horror movie, it's a detective story, it's a mystery, it's a science fiction story, it's an action movie, and it crosses over into a lot of different genres.
Disarm him to camera, i.e. that camera.
The colors are extraordinary. It's very muted, it's very hot, it's very dusty, but it's not trying to look glamorous, the film.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
I think everyone will be surprised by every twist and turn that this film takes.
It's gonna nail him to the seats.
It's frightening, it's unsettling.
It's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
There are a lot of surprises.
You're invited over, you're gonna have a ball.
Predator 2. He's in town. With a few days to kill. He has thermal image vision, optic prism body armor, laser-guided smart weapons. And now, he's in L.A. with a few days to kill. Predator 2, creating the ultimate hunter.
We've got an infrared heat camera. Basically what we're doing here is we are the Predator's eyeball. The Predator's not around, but we've got his eyeball right here, and that's how the Predator sees. He sees infrared heat. This Predator is a real nasty creature, and he's sitting up here on the roof of this building looking down on these people.
This is the thermographic camera that we just saw on the roof. What we do with this imagery, we process it, we colorize it, and we put it back to film to show you the Predator's point of view.
We prepared a little trap for this Predator.
The Predator is attracted to this kind of atmosphere of violence and heat.
He's right behind you. He sees the damn light. Turn him off. Turn him off.
One of the fantasies we had is what would this camouflage effect look like? What would the Predator look like in an urban environment like the city?
So why can't we see him?
Defensive adaptations are astounding. It's somehow able to bend light. The perfect camouflage.
Quiet, everybody. Real quiet, please.
It's a spaceship housing our Predator, a very functional, smart, strong alien craft, very much like the Predator itself, you know, mimicking its, you know, movements and camouflage.
What do I know about the Predator? I know it scared the hell out of me when we were setting up for this scene.
This particular mask that the Predator wears is part of his armament, part of his weaponry.
He's a hunter. He comes from a race of hunters.
There's almost no weight.
But it cuts like steel.
This Predator has more weapons to play with. He's come with more toys.
Everyone knows who the Predator is if they saw the first picture, but they don't necessarily know everything this Predator can do, and they certainly cannot predict what happened to this film.
Guess who's back?